Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
Somehow, by the magic of politics, Congress did manage to pass a continuing resolution to get the government funded. So the lights will stay on until September 30th. At least in the offices the Trump administration didn't close off and sell. Congress has a lot more to do, though. We get the rundown from Bloomberg Deputy News Director Loren Duggan. And Lauren, we don't usually get into the politics of it, but they were kind of interesting this time because former majority leader, now minority leader Chuck Schumer, kind of got the ire of his party in deciding to go ahead, for whatever many reasons, to vote for the bill. Enough senators came along with him.
That's right. They got to the magic number 60, which is what you need in the Senate to pass most things, including government funding legislation of the sort that they were doing to prevent the shutdown. And he and a few others backed the cloture vote, as it's known. Now, we talk about political, we're getting procedural here, but you need 60 votes to cut off debate. And he was one of the senators willing to provide one of those votes to ensure the legislation could move forward, the government would be funded. But that's come, as you say, at some cost with members of his own party who have been very critical of him for doing that.
Right. So whatever the implications are on the politics side, we'll have to see. What's in the bill that's important here? I mean, it's not exactly a CR. I mean, the Democrats were somewhat accurate in saying this wasn't your grandfather's continuing resolution.
It's not. It had the look of one. It says whatever was in effect in fiscal 24 will pull forward till the end of fiscal 25. So if the rule was there, unless we do something with it, it stays in place. There were pretty big changes for the Defense Department, some plus-ups in a number of key areas, and also some money in some border programs, which is consistent with what the Trump administration wants. There were some domestic cuts. There were the accounts that had funded earmarks the year before. They didn't get money this time around because there weren't earmarks in this bill, or community projects as they're known. So there were some pretty big departures from the fiscal 2024 language. But what Democrats had wanted was something to preserve their rights and prevent the cuts that DOJ has wanted to make throughout the government, curtailing money that was already provided, or cut back on agencies and staffing and things like that. There was an effort to add that, and they didn't.
Right. The idea was they wanted to prevent DOJ from running rampant while the government was, quote unquote, shut down.
Exactly.
All right. So that's done. And it is a CR in whatever form it is, which means in some ways the government is still a little hamstrung for now till the end of the fiscal year, because under a CR, new initiatives are not supposed to get underway. Fair to say?
Well, they made an exception for the Defense Department here, where they said you could have new starts as long as the House Appropriations Bill or Senate Committee bill from last year, if something was in there, they can move forward with that. So it's a little bit different language than we've seen in past years, which will give the DOD more flexibility. One of the concerns about a year-long CR is always for the Pentagon. There's some bipartisan concern in both chambers about a year-long CR for them. But as I said earlier, they did a number of adjustments to the major funding pools for DOD, which will give them some flexibility going into the next year.
And how much more money will DOD be getting relative to what it would have gotten under a so-called clean CR?
I think overall it's about what the cap would have allowed, but it's some adjustments here and there. You know, not every program got wins, some got losses, and there were some focusing on some weapon systems over others. But in general, the money is there, and one of the provisions to give more money for junior enlisted troops will get the funding it needs. That's been a big priority for Congress last year going into this year as well.
So it's not a gigantic number, something around $6 billion or so, or maybe less than really 1% of the DOD budget.
Right. That's not a huge adjustment, but for the junior enlisted troops, it'll definitely make a difference for them.
All right. So Congress, what are they going to do next now that's out of the way? There is fiscal 2026, and whatever Biden administration would have submitted or would have been working on for that is clearly not going to wash. So when can we expect the proposal from the White House, and will Congress try to take up that in the 6 months they have before this fiscal year runs out?
I think that's one of the four big fiscal questions in front of them. Fiscal 2026, they do need to get underway with that. We'll be waiting for the administration's request and the hearing cycle and then writing the bills. I think we won't see that for several weeks still because, as you noted, what had been written under the Biden administration won't fly under the Trump administration. They probably will want to reflect some of the DOGE-style cuts there. That's really one of the big processes, but there's still this discussion about what to do with the reconciliation bill, spending and taxes there, and how to structure that debate. There's still what to do about the debt limit because the X date, as it's known, when it would be hard to finance government operations, that's on the horizon. That's going to be another big debate. We'll see how that plays out. And then there's this rescissions question. One of the things that was proposed was things DOGE wants to do. You could send it up as a rescissions package. Congress could debate that and agree to curb back the money that they provided in the past. That might be something else we see. So lots of fiscal questions still ahead for Congress, even having wrapped up this rather major debate on Friday night.
And on the debt ceiling, I guess one of the proposals was that at the passage of a budget, that was when they would pass the debt ceiling, because in theory, I guess you would know what your deficit would be if you know what your budget's going to be and CBO tells you what your revenues are going to be. That's still then an open question, which means it'll be a fresh fight when the time does come around.
That's right. And that's part of that larger debate about one bill versus two and the budget resolution being adopted in both chambers and setting that up. The House had talked about a $4 trillion debt limit increase as part of that broader package. Senate hasn't quite weighed in. So we'll see when they get back from this week-long recess if they can make progress on how to let that debate and those following bills kind of play out.
And the language over the weekend was pretty bitter, on the part of like Chuck Schumer and some intemperate language, you might say. It sounds like that even though this has passed them, there's still a lot of enmity going on in the two sides, mainly in the House and the Senate, really.
Yeah, I think there's Democrats are concerned about federal agencies. I mean, I think it's telling that they passed the CR, and then there was a executive order that came out in the evening saying 7 agencies should be cut back as far as they could be while still preserving their statutory functions. That's things like the parent company of Voice of America and the Interagency Council on Homelessness, the Institute of Museum and Library Services. They're all being cut just hours after that key vote. So I do think there's a lot of enmity. The Democrats are figuring things out themselves, but also trying to figure out how to mount a defense against the president, the administration, and the cuts that they don't want to see in a number of programs that are very important to them, obviously.
And on the front of Senate approval of nominees, are they mostly through everyone that Trump wants to get through? It seems like every cabinet position is filled, if I'm correct.
All the cabinet secretaries, the one cabinet member that hasn't is Elise Stefanik. She's a House Republican right now. They need her vote, so they haven't confirmed her to move up to be the ambassador to the UN. And now we're seeing a lot of the deputy secretary level and agency level heads. So when they come back, the head of the NIH, the head of the FDA, some deputy secretaries at a couple of departments, those are being teed up for votes, and they'll work through those. There's quite a large number of those to still get through. Those don't get the high profile kind of sizzle as the cabinet secretaries, but a lot of work left to do on that nomination front.
And we haven't seen a judge conveyor belt yet. Is that coming soon, do you think?
I'm sure at some point it will. There's also a bill out there to add federal judgeships. There was one that was passed at the end of the year, vetoed, and they're going to start over with that. So there is a shortage of judges, and they're looking to create more positions, fill those positions, and other vacancies. That'll definitely be coming to the fore here at some point.
Loren Duggan is Deputy News Director of Bloomberg Government. We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Hear the Federal Drive on your schedule. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.